So you know how to hold your scissors, use your scissors, and you know all about your combs. Now I'm going to show you how to just start cutting on a strip. So this is what we call a strip. So it's a little piece of hair on a false little bit of skin, and it's just anchored to a full head block with these nice little pins. You kind of have to manipulate them into the scalp. It's kind of quite interesting, really. So we've got 4 little pins on that, and it's just attached to my head block, and I'm just using a head block stand. Okay, so this is where we start cutting first. We start cutting first on a strip, just so that we're not wasting whole head blocks or anything like that, because these are a lot cheaper to replace. If you make a big mistake or anything like that, this is easy enough to give you. However, we were starting on a head block and you kind of mess that up and you need a whole new head block, then it can get expensive. So we start everything on a strip. Cool. So I'm going to teach you how to just start your solid. Okay, so you can see I've got my scissors palmed. I'm going to use my comb to section, and I'm going to just start at the bottom, and we're going to come across. Let's see if I can get that a bit straighter. It is hard on a strip too, because everything's punched in by machine. It's not super organic. So it's not going to have the cleanest line as what you would have on a client. You can see that how it's been punched in, it's a little bit irregular. So don't be too stressed or too scared if you're doing that, okay? I think that's as good as I'm going to get it on this gal. Yeah, you can see she's got like little areas missing and all of that. So it's as good as I've got. Then I'm going to clip her up with my sectioning clip. I've got that facing up, that way it's not going to come down and be saggy and get caught in my section. Taking the wide part of my comb, I'm going to start in the center. We're going to comb it down. I'm going to pull a little bit. I'm not going to pull too much, because you can see how it's been punched in by the machine, that it's got like a little bit of a bend on it. So we're going to come into the center. I'm going to pull on it, and I'm going to keep my palm facing the floor. Okay. Bring it down, and then we're going to cut just those ends off. Cool. I'm not cutting straight on my fingers. My fingers aren't straight. They're not a good guide. You can see too that I'm resting my hand on the back of that little metal contraption here. That way I've kind of anchored myself. Cool. So cutting down. And then I'm just going to create my square line. So we call this solid, one length, or just purely cutting a straight line. Okay, so I just work from the middle. So working from the middle, side to side. Okay, so giving it a really good comb, and then I'm just going to check that we're nice and even. Because you are cutting things through your fingers, your line's not going to be as straight the first couple of times. You've got to go over it a little bit. And your guide is something that you want to spend a bit of time on making sure it's perfect anyway, okay? Because your guide equals the rest of your haircut. So if your guide's out, the rest of your haircut's out. Cool? You see each time I'm cutting, and I'm not cutting and I'm combing, I've got my finger out. So it's really important. Cool, so that's the first section. Next section. Hopefully this little part of the head is much nicer to clean and section. There you go. So again, pinning her and clipping her out of the way, giving it a good comb. You can see this little guy here, he's been punched in by the machine, so it wants to come out here. So I'm going to have to put a little bit more tension on that area there. So we're coming down. Same thing again, everything's just repeated. Okay. Coming down, finding my line, and cutting straight on that line. Cool? Pulling a little bit more on the side here, just so it shows she's not going to jump up. And cut straight on my line. Okay. Then we're going to do this side. I'm going to come and see my line just there. And I've got my first couple of sections, and all you do is keep working up the head over and over again. So you can see here as I'm starting to drop the hair too, that you can see through and see your guide. That's when I would cut. You don't want to spend hours and hours and hours with really small sections. So you can imagine if my next section was that and I took that down and there was a tiny bit of hair, I cut that, and then a tiny bit of hair and cut that. That would take you a really long time. And look, it's nice to be precise and really want to be, you know, perfect at it. But at the end of the day, if it's taking you 3 hours just to cut your solid, you might not be viable in a salon. So you kind of got to use your own judgment sometimes of how big your sections are going to be. If you're dealing with really thick hair and you can't see your guide, then yeah, sure, your sections need to be smaller. So just finishing this little lady off, coming down. You can see I'm just holding my fingers just above that guide, so I'll comb that again for you. Okay. And then we're going to push this guy out of the way, and then you're going to cut straight on that. Cool? Okay. And on this side. It's a good idea to always keep combing it too and making sure that you've got everything even from the top, especially too if you're dealing with someone who's got maybe a curlier hair, and then you can kind of get your finer part of your comb in and give it a good comb and then just come and check it. Okay. Might find that you've got little bits of fluff or fallout from the hair. That's head block, and that happens with people as well. Okay. Just spending a bit of time fluffing, making sure it's perfect. I got a little bit there, so I'm going to cut him off. And so forth with that. Cool. And that's cutting your solid on a strip.